Hi, I'm Chris from airwindows, and we're about to embark upon a journey of dither magic and exploration. I'm going to be leading you through a whole series of dithers that will come out for free for Audio Unit and Mac and PC VST so that people can monitor their audio using converters and things, 24-bit or record 24-bit. In a whole variety of different ways. But first, I've got a plugin that is going to help make that happen. The dithers that I'm pointing out, I am hard coding them to 24-bit. I think 24-bit is what you should be focusing on as a working musician. I don't see a point in dealing with 16-bit. However, there is some use to doing that or obscure values like 20-bit or whatever. And there's also a use in being able to hear what the dithers are doing, and so I've got this new plugin called BitShiftGain. Now this is a follow-up to PuristGain. And the thing is, PuristGain is, well, high fidelity. That's what it's designed to do, but you might not realize that even for PuristGain, with its processing done at long double resolution, even that is not quite as accurate as a certain obscure kind of gain, BitShiftGain. And I'll show you how that works with this little piece of paper and a pen. Now supposing you've got a waveform and it's coming through at some point, so you've got a sample that's there. And say that one's 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Imagine these are bits. What that means is this is at a voltage level. And if you change the volume of this to be somewhere like there, you got to come up with some way of dealing with the volume level where it stands. It's going to have to be dithered or in some way fit into that. That's what PuristGain is all about. However, we've got the a kind of a special case. If you boost stuff by exactly, and in fact I can show you exactly what it's going to be. Here, I've got a thing here. We'll cut this down to 0 for the moment and put in a test oscillator. Then we'll drag BitShiftGain over to there. My test oscillator is coming in at exactly distortion. Okay, exactly 0 dB. Okay, now that's 0 minus 3. So let's doctor this. It's not coming in exactly. Is this the fault of BitShiftGain? No, it is not. Test oscillator, you tell it to be minus 3 dB, and it's minus 3.3. So, and maybe that's because, aha, I had to resettle the gain level there. Hit Option and click on it, and it will re-zero. So here we are with our 0, and here is BitShiftGain. If you take BitShiftGain and set it to be 1 bit quieter, boop, we're now 9 dB. That is 6 dB quieter. Or indeed, I can just go to 0 now because I just did the little fiddling a bit. That's 6 dB quieter, and then 12 dB quieter. And that's just the oscillator. So what's going on with a bit shift is that it is setting the volume to a different sort of array of bits. It's being, the samples are recorded using a scale kind of like this. So this is the first position, this is the second position. It works out kind of like it works out kind of like this. You have your 0, and then the next thing that you can go to is 1, and then the next thing you can go to is 1, 0, because you can't go back to 0 again. There's bits have only on or off. Then you go to 1, 1, then 1, 0, 1, because again, you can't go back to 0. You have to put another decimal space in there. Then 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, and so on and so forth. What a bit shift is following the position of these things. Like this would be 1, 0, 0. So if you were going to make it be louder, that would go to 1, 0, 0, 0. You'd add another 0 on the end. Now, the thing to understand about doing the gain changing in this way, as you saw, it's 6 dB gain. But if you do 6 dB gain exactly right, and this plugin is kind of hardwired to do the math super accurately, it's not even doing mathematical calculations to produce the figures, it's just punching them in raw numbers to make sure that it's perfectly accurate. What you get is a position where you've got like this. You got your 1, 1, 0. If you did a bit shift that was a negative bit shift, it will go down 6 dB and make the 1, 1, 0, or throw away the 0 at the end, and you get 1, 1. This is also a legitimate value in the same setup that was using this. Essentially, if you're doing a bit shift style gain, what you get is a situation where you've thrown away the least significant bit. The finest detail goes away. You can't keep that. And then if you boost, you're boosting it and you've got the least significant bit starts getting filled in with zeros. You're not getting any more information, but everything else is scaling up or down 6 dB at a time. And the positions that they land on the, in floating point, you'd call this the mantissa. And in fixed point, it's just the bits that make up the fixed point number. If you do all of these changes at exactly 6 dB, then every single position of a resulting, sample value is exactly what it's supposed to be. There is no shifting them up or down to fit into where you wind up. Instead, you're using the same scale, you're using the same bits for your number, and you do exactly the 6 dB gain shift, and it lines up perfectly with the arrangements of the bits and the way that the value is kept. So essentially, BitShiftGain is a perfect gain change. It doesn't even do noise shaping or anything like that, doesn't do any sort of dithering or whatever, because it doesn't have to. When you do BitShiftGain at this exact 6 dB increments, and again, remember, I'm punching in the figures on this exactly to make sure that it comes as close as conceivably possible. Because one thing that you got to bear in mind, with floating point numbers, I'm drawing these little squares in to represent what a thing is. With a floating point number, what you get is these positions here. Like this would be a sign bit, and this would be what's called your mantissa. It's the figures that you're keeping, and it's always going to be between 0.5 and 1. And then these figures over here, and you'll have many more of them, it's not just 3 bits, will be your exponent, and there will be typically 8 of those in a 32-bit floating point number. And that scales up or down the mantissa part so that it's always handling different degrees of figures. Like this would be a lower part of the exponent, and then if you kick the exponent up, suddenly, boom, your positions are going to be a lot larger than they were, and then you go on there for a while, and boom, suddenly they're even huger than that. This is how floating point numbers can represent incredibly tiny values, and then also incredibly huge values, unthinkably huge values. And what BitShiftGain does is it'll take any position within this, doesn't matter what the exponent is, but it'll come up with something in this general region and shift it by 1 so that your volume levels will correspond to other places on this same figure. They won't have to be recalculated. Nothing will shift in the moving of all of the bits along. Long story short, I released this because I am about to put out a whole batch of dithers, starting with basic functional normal type dithers and getting on to some of my most revolutionary stuff, because I started with dithers. Nobody outdithers me. And it's useful for me to be able to demonstrate these using a BitShiftGain so that you can hear what they're doing. But there's another thing. There may still be people wanting to do 16-bit dithering. I don't think they should. CDs, forget CDs. Put out high-resolution stuff like 24-bit, or put out 24-bit and make your MP3s off of those. CDs, seriously? But 2 things. Firstly, DitherBox is still available. You can buy that for $50, and I got to sell it to you through PayPal because my payment processor went out of business earlier this year. However, if you can live with not having the convenience factor of a plugin that has all of these dithers, plus a lot of monitoring techniques as well, and which you can select 16 bits, you can use BitShiftGain to get any output, any bit depth that you want. And here's how you do it. If you had a dither between these guys, right, it is defaulting to 24-bit. That's so that it can go neatly on the output of stuff. You can bounce files out to 24-bit. You can monitor through typically converters want to take 24-bit audio in, and that's by far the most common thing. So that's how this is supposed to work. And they're featureless dither plugins. There's nothing that you really are supposed to control in dithers. They're just there. But if you wanted a 16-bit output, here's what you'd do. You would take the first BitShiftGain, and you'd go like 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16. 8 bits down gives you the 16-bit level. You'd be having music, for instance, like this music, which is currently muted. Let me bring it back. Boop. Option click on that brings the volume level up. Here's a bit of Alien Kittens. People seem to like this music better than some of my music. And then 8 bits down, you can still kind of sort of hear it, but this is reducing the volume level down to where what was originally a peak is right down to the very quiet. It's like 48 dB down, if not more. Actually, that's about it. It's 48 dB down. You do your dithering between there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bits up. But supposing you want 20 bits, well, I can fix that up too. It's 24, 3, 22, 20. 4 bits down and 4 bits up, and boom. Or if you did 8 bits down, it's 16 bits down, 16 bits up. And you can hear pretty clearly that this is not doing anything bad to the sound. This is a major shift. You can switch up and down like this. And this can't have any smoothing, like you can't use it as a fader because it's literally a bit shift. There is no way to handle a volume level between 6 dB more or 6 dB less. It has to operate on those increments because that's how the digital encoding of values works. That doing a bit shift is always going to be a 6 dB jump. But given that, we have a nice, clean level change. It's about as pure as you could possibly... I mean, this makes BitShiftGain look sick as far as accuracy is concerned. There's just that limitation of it being tied to the 6 dB gain jumps. And you could make a fader, and you'd adjust the fader, but it only moves in 6 dB clicks. Maybe I should do that. I'll have to do a console-style plugin like that, in which the gain trim is kind of like this over here in the API. The pad button is -20. That's all you get, -20. So I'll make console systems in which your only gain trim is in increments of 6 dB because it's completely lossless as far as tone quality is concerned. You're going to lose or fill in zeros in the finest detail, which is probably right down around the noise floor anyway if you're working in 24-bit, but none of the positionings of any of the other sample values. And the funny thing about sample values, since I'm doing a little adjunvocational thing going on, suppose these are sample values. Well, you might think that the signal is supposed to go like this, right? I mean, it's recording sample values, so that's presumably what you're supposed to have. Oh, no. These are just little signposts telling the converter what to do on the output. And our real value is going to go around the outside edges of those things. Might go through some of the middle ones. And it's going to tend to treat it as a sort of slalom course. It'll go around the outside edges and stuff like that. This takes on great importance when you've got high frequency stuff. Something like that. If you've got that, what you'll get is a waveform sort of like this. But if you scaled all of those back by exactly if you did a bit shift on it so that it was like 6 dB down, the end result that you'd get would be smaller, certainly, but it would be exactly the same waveform that you had in the higher volume, because none of the relative positions of the bit are changing relative to each other. They're going to be in precisely the same position. And this is why I've made BitShiftGain, and this is why I'm putting BitShiftGain out for you guys, because you can never have too much sonic integrity. I found in digital audio that doing work with digital audio, the sonic integrity of stuff is very easily lost. You're making things like these waveforms here, and you're adjusting them in various ways. And the more these little position points shift around relative to each other, the more is lost. It can start shifting around in very tiny ways, but the result is always this sort of cardboard, thin, two-dimensional quality of the audio that's everything I've always hated about digital, and why I got into the business to fix that so that I could have tools that I liked. That's really what I've been doing here all along. So enjoy BitShiftGain, and you'll be seeing a lot more of this, because all of the dithers that I'm about to put out will be using this to demonstrate what they do. And again, if you want to use these dithers that are designed to be purely 24-bit output, because I think that's where things should stand, is at the 24-bit output, and you want to do 16-bit, what you're going to end up doing is taking it down by 8 bits. And by the way, something I'm going to end up doing later, if you've got, I'll do this when I have the capacity to do a really good visual aid, but if you've got a bunch of these things in 32-bit floating point, you've got this, and then this is the next one, and then this is the next one, and they get increasingly huger as they go. And there's an 8-bit exponent, meaning there are 256 different volume levels of these. We can even, I'll go with a regular pen here and continue this onwards. And onwards, just to make the point of how this works. So check this out. Here's how floating point works. Here's a level that maybe is in the middle there, and if you start getting to smaller and smaller levels, you've got this, and then a bit lower than that is this. Trying to still be able to see what I'm doing. That's a very small feature, and then it goes beyond that, even smaller. These are pretty significant levels of change between the different sort of stair-steppy values. This is where volume levels can be placed in 32-bit floating point. Like, you can only place this, you can't stick this really fine stuff in the middle of here. It doesn't work that way. So this is normal audio stuff, and it's around, maybe around what 24-bit fixed point would be. And then you've got these, and this is finer, and so on and so forth. And you wind up with calculations that can be made on these tiny, tiny little figures. Oh, by the way, if you're multiplying a value here by a value here, you have to change this value over into this level, which makes it pretty much be 0. Don't worry about it too much. I will worry about these things so that you don't have to. Somebody ought to be worrying about these things. And I hope you like BitShiftGain. I'll be back with some dithers before very long. Talk to you later.